So this year's Apple Spring event is all but confirmed to be taking place on the 8th of March, and of course the gossip streams have been flowing full force. So what do we expect to get at this event? Let's ramble.
Hold up, face go wild when I pull up. They all on me like they want some.
Hey, what's up guys? It's great to see you all again, and if you're new here, I'm Patrick, and this is why I ramble about tech and other stuff. So we've been anticipating a spring event, but the date was a bit of a guesstimate. Remember, last year we didn't get an event until April, but last week, Mark Gurman wrote in his newsletter Power On that the Apple event will be taking place on the 8th of March, and with an accuracy score of 85 on AppleTrack, Gurman is definitely one of the most reputable leakers out there, and so it is fairly safe to assume that this is indeed going to happen. Historically, the invitations for these events hit our inboxes on the Tuesday before the event, which would mean the event would be made official this coming Tuesday, the 1st of March. So with that said, what are we expecting to get at this spring event? Now, it is going to be very difficult to top last year's spring loaded event, which was literally loaded with new products. We got the M1 iPad Pro, we finally saw AirTags after years of speculation, a purple iPhone, and of course the brand new and colorful M1 iMacs. This year, it's looking to be a lukewarm event with rather lackluster products for the most part. Let's start with the small stuff and work our way up. We know Apple is going to launch the public version of iOS 15.4 very soon, since the developer and the public beta have been out for a bit now. So to officially announce it at the March event would make perfect sense. iOS 15.4 will be the last big update before iOS 16 and will come alongside macOS 12.3, and it will give us a few things. We'll be able to unlock our phones with a face mask on. Hey, better late than never, right? We're also expecting to get tap to pay, as well as some new emojis. But the big new feature, the one we've all been waiting for since last year, is of course universal control, which lets you operate several Macs and iPads with just one keyboard and one mouse. You can even operate your Macs and all your iPads straight from the iPad Pro's Magic Keyboard. I'm currently working on a video about just that, explaining all the ways in which this new feature can be implemented in our workflows. I've been testing the new beta OSs on both the iPad mini, the iPad Pro, as well as my brand spanking new M1 Max MacBook Pro. That's right, I took that beautiful new machine and I took a risk by installing an unstable beta version of the new macOS just to show you guys how it all works. So be a lamb, hit that subscribe button. All right, moving on. The same Mark Gurman also reported that the new iPhone SE is coming, and when I say new, I mean incremental upgrade to the 2020 model. I mean, historically, the iPhone SE has been a no-frills body, but always with the latest chip. So the first SE came out in 2016, and it had the A9 chip, which at the time was found in the iPhone 6s. The 2020 version of the SE had the same chip as the iPhone 11, which was at the time the A13 Bionic. So it would make sense if this year's SE got the A15 Bionic, bringing it up to par with the current models. Other upgrades might include the addition of 5G, and it is reported to get a better camera. Although if the body stays the same, that means it will not get a multi-camera module like the other current iPhones, but it will stay with a single camera setup. So how then could that be improved? Well, it's possible that Apple will include sensor shift stabilization into this iPhone, and of course a new updated chip will also further optimize whatever camera they're going to put in there. Currently, that's a single 12 megapixel camera that can shoot up to 4K 60, which is not bad considering it is Apple's lower end phone. Now, moving on to the more interesting stuff, and that is reports of potentially several Macs, as well as a new iPad Air. Now, the new Mac story is an interesting one. Mark Gurman has been reporting since last year that he expects a whole slew of new Macs to be dropping in 2022. As we know, Apple has been transitioning away from Intel towards their own more efficient M chips. This year, we expect Apple to really shift into gear with the new silicon based on the recent M1 Pro and the M1 Max chips, a new M2 chip, and super boosted versions of the M1 Max chip. Gurman gave us a breakdown of all the Macs he's expecting to be dropped this year. And as you can see, there is a Mac Mini with an M1 Pro chip, which essentially means a Mac Mini Pro. There's a 13-inch M2 MacBook Pro and an M2 Mac Mini, an M2 iMac, as well as an iMac Pro, which will have variations on the Pro and the Pro Max chips. And lastly, Gurman expects a new Mac Pro, which would include multiple versions of the ultra-powerful M1 Max chip. And having used that M1 Max chip myself for a few weeks now on my 14-inch MacBook Pro, I can only imagine what an absolute monster that Mac Pro is going to be, and I don't even want to know how much it will cost. Anyway, we know that Apple usually saves the high-powered Macs for the fall event, and with the M1 Pro and M1 Max chips already on the market, it is likely that Apple will be presenting the first computers with the new M2 chip at the March event. 2 weeks ago, a French website called Consomac released an article showing filings by Apple in the Eurasian Regulatory Database where they filed 3 new Macs, one of which is a portable computer, aka MacBook, and 2 are non-portable, aka desktop. Now, since it is unlikely that Apple will present the Mac Pro and the iMac Pro at this event, that kind of leaves us with the 13-inch MacBook Pro as the portable computer and 1 or maybe even 2 Mac Minis, the M2 Mac Mini and maybe even the Mac Mini Pro. Personally, I would be super interested in an upgraded Mac Mini. I enjoyed working on the M1 Mac Mini very much, but a beefier mini desktop with more ports, especially additional Thunderbolt ports, would be amazing. Of course, the portable computer could also indicate an updated MacBook Air, but that seems more like something Apple would release ahead of the holiday season. Mac Rumors reported, based on a Chinese source on Weibo, that a 13-inch MacBook Pro is expected with the new M2 chip on board, but no major design changes, which means it will not have a notch, nor will it have ProMotion, but it will have the touch bar. The question is, with the new 14-inch MacBook Pro, do we still need a 13-inch model? So why would Apple release an upgraded 13-inch? The way I see it, it could be 2 reasons. One is to introduce the new M2 chip at an entry level, or maybe Apple wants a MacBook that still offers a touch bar for those fanatics that hated to see it go. Personally, I never understood the touch bar. I kept hitting it by accident, and I'm glad it's gone on my 14-inch MacBook Pro. Also, the touch bar sounds to me like a shady nightclub somewhere in Berlin. By the way, the fact that Apple filed these 3 Macs with the authorities doesn't necessarily mean they're all gonna get dropped in March. Apple in the past has registered these things months in advance. Anywho, enough talk about Macs, let's talk about the iPad Air 5. It's been about 18 months since the new iPad Air was released, so it makes total sense to see an upgrade at the March event. Now, I know you guys love iPads just as much as I do, but I'm afraid I don't have anything spectacular to report here. The iPad Air 5 is gonna look exactly the same as the iPad 4 with a few updates, and we'll get to those in a minute. But first, I wanted to have a chat with you guys about the iPad Air and where it even fits these days anyway. I mean, we have the iPad Pro for the power user, but now we also have the iPad Mini 6, which is actually more powerful than the current iPad Air 4 at a lower cost. The iPad Air is kind of the taint of the iPads. It's neither a Pro nor a Mini, it's in between. What, I can't say taint on YouTube? It's a tweener, an in-betweener. Anyway, the current iPad Air 4 is too expensive for what it is currently. You know, I'm a huge fan of the iPad Mini because it's such a little powerhouse. There really is no reason to currently buy the iPad Air 4 at a higher price unless you absolutely want that larger screen. And even then, I would suggest spending a little more and going for the 11-inch iPad Pro. The Air 5 is reported to have the same LCD screen. I mean, it's obviously not gonna get mini LED because that would bring it way too close to the M1 iPad Pro, but it's not even getting OLED. It is gonna get a new 12 megapixel camera with center stage, but of course it would be very strange not to give it center stage when even the Mini has it. The Air will also come with 5G, I guess that's cool, and a new chip. Now, a new chip could mean either an A15 Bionic or the M1 chip, but like I said earlier, that's very unlikely as it would basically turn it into an iPad Pro Lite, and Apple doesn't want that. Another smaller upgrade could take place in the speakers. Maybe it will get an actual 4-speaker system this time instead of just 4 grills and 2 speakers, as is the case with the current iPad 4. Oh, and please, Apple, do not give us 64 gigs base storage. That's just not enough in 2022. 128 gigs base storage, please and thank you. Honestly, I'm extremely curious as to what direction Apple is going to take the iPads. I mean, the current M1 iPad Pro, especially the 12.9 inch, is hugely overspec'd. I'm using the 16 gigabyte version with the 1 terabyte of storage and of course the M1 chip. And while it's an absolutely amazing machine and I love using it, there isn't a single app out there that makes use of the actual hardware potential. When the iPad Pro was announced last year, many tech channels, including myself, we're expecting Pro apps like Final Cut Pro and Logic for the iPad Pro. But that didn't happen. So if the current iPad Pro is way more powerful than it needs to be, what on earth would a new iPad Pro look like if Apple were to release one in the fall? And more importantly, why do we need one? Let me know in the comments where you guys see Apple heading with this. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, please give it one of these. It really does make a difference. Subscribe for more content. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next one.